Hello, hello, hello. Hello, men of the Married Man Cave. I'm Dennis, the Married Man's Coach. I help you get more of what you want out of your marriage without sacrificing your manhood or your masculinity. All right, so today's topic is the sex talk. The sex talk. And by the sex talk, I mean when you start talking to your wife about why you're not having enough sex and what you can do about it, and you get real sensitive and you start sharing your feelings and you tell her about how much it hurts you to not be having sex. That's what we're going to talk about today. But more importantly, why that's a terrible idea and why having the sex talk makes it more likely that you're going to have less sex. But before we do that, leave a comment down below. Have you ever had the sex talk? Socks does. Have you ever had the sex talk? Have you ever had it? Leave us a comment below. And if you're watching the replay, just leave a comment anyway. So the sex talk is when you talk to your wife about the sex you're not having, basically. And I want to distinguish that from a problem that you might be having in your sex life. Maybe, if one of you has some past history with abuse in some way that makes sex more difficult, that's not what I'm talking about here. If you have if you have malfunction down there, that's not what I'm talking about here. I'm specifically talking about the guys, and there are a lot of them, not just in our group, but in the world, who are not having as much sex as they want. They are on unequal footing in terms of sex. And so the problem with the sex talk is you don't have a sex problem. If you're not having sex a lot, whatever that means for you, the average married couple has sex once a week, and a sexless marriage is considered sex fewer than 10 times a year. Right? So just under once a month. That's what a sexless marriage is. But the average married couple is having sex once a day. But whatever it means to you, it doesn't matter how much sex I'm having or how much sex the guy next door is having. What matters is what's appropriate to you. What do you think is enough sex? And so when you go to your wife and you tell her, hey, we're not really having sex, it usually doesn't work. In my experience, both doing it before I understood what I understand now, and then the men that I speak with and that I coach, is that the sex talk is at best a Band-Aid, meaning you might get pity sex once, maybe twice. You probably never get a pity blowjob. And the reason is because you don't have a sex problem. You do not have a sex problem. You have an attraction problem. If you think about your sex life, now most of us, when you first got with your wife, things were pretty good. You didn't have to have the sex talk because you both wanted to have sex. And attraction is not just about sex though, like fights, arguing and stuff like that. That's also a symptom of an attraction problem. When two people are attracted together, they're just predisposed. They're in a mindset to make things work, to get along. And so if you're having the sex talk, then you're like barking up the wrong tree, we'll say. But it's not even just that. You're making it worse. If you're having the sex talk, you're making it worse. And I know that in 2021, and we're all like the new masculinity, and we're supposed to share our feelings and all this nonsense. And a side note, healthy expression of feelings is important and it's healthy. But men and women are different. We emote differently. We express differently. So, and if a man has a chronic problem, depression or anxiety, then I'm the first one to say, get professional help. But your wife is not a professional counselor or therapist. And if she is, she shouldn't be your professional. She shouldn't be your counselor, your therapist. So the reason that the sex talk makes the attraction problem worse is because you can't talk your wife into being attracted to you. And that's what you got to fix in order for her to want to have sex with you. Now, of course, sometimes she's a person, she's going to get horny or whatever. She's going to get turned on and she's going to want to have sex with you and you're right there. Sure, great. That's going to always be on her terms. But in terms of attraction, if you can learn how to be attractive, and I don't mean the shape of your face, I do mean your physical appearance in a somewhat. Like if you're not taking care of yourself, if you're gaining weight consistently, if you're not in shape, that affects how attractive you are. But, there are ways around that too. But essentially, if a man is like that, he's overweight, he's not taking care of himself, it's not so much about the appearance. It's more about what it means. If a man who's overweight is not taking care of himself, it means he doesn't value himself. So why the hell should anybody else value you? I mean, that's how it goes. So if you're having the sex talk, you're making the attraction problem worse. And I've talked about attraction. I talk about attraction all the time because I think that is the neglected aspect of a marriage. And last week we talked about frame. Frame's an important part of being attractive, but it's just a small part of it. So what do you do then? Right? What do you do? You're not having the kind of sex that you want. You're not having the sex you want. What do you do? Well, you gotta go back to yourself. You gotta look at yourself hard in the mirror as a man and say, where have you fallen off? Where are you not taking care of yourself? How do you need to get better? And that's kind of the first step. And then you got to get to work on those things. And that's where a coach comes in, right? That's why I do what I do. It's not just about attraction. It's not just about like getting in shape and stuff, although we cover all that. It's also about how to communicate with your wife from a masculine frame, because you could be buff, in shape. You could be like, Zoolander style male model and still be unattractive to your wife. If you don't know how to approach your wife and talk to your wife in a way that's not going to be attractive. And if you start talking about how you're not getting enough sex, attraction's just going to. So unfortunately, the answer here, and it's not a quick answer, but if you're not getting the sex that you want in your marriage, then what you've got to be doing is you got to be doing a lot of back work to make yourself the best version of yourself as possible. And you can't do this overnight. You got to work on it and work on it hard. But eventually you set a boundary about sex. You set a boundary about sex because sex, marriage, there's a marital contract that nobody talks about. And that is sexual exclusivity, meaning you just sleep with one person, in exchange for sorry, I'm laughing at a comment here. So the joke, Zoolander is a great movie. So the unwritten marital contract is sexual exclusivity, means neither one of you sleeps with anybody else in exchange for sexual access. So if you're not getting sexual access, then the unwritten contract's been broken. And that means everything downstream from it is in question. Now, I do not recommend that anybody who's not getting enough sex goes to their wife and say, hey, give me sex or I'm going to leave you. I do not recommend that. You got to look at yourself hard in the mirror, and you got to do the hard work of manning up and getting better and learning how to be the kind of man that women want to sleep with. Right? Because even if you said that to your wife and you left your wife, which was not recommending, bad idea, and you walk out the street, what do you think? Those women out there are going to want to sleep with you? No. You got to fix attraction first. And that means you got to take care of yourself. You got to value yourself. You got to show up with the right frame, and you have to be assertive and confident. And you have to move. You have to have a vision of where you're going in your life. You have to have a mission. All of these things contribute to being attractive. And it's harder the second time. And it's harder the second time. And the second time, I mean, when you're first attracted to your wife and she attracted to you, it's unconscious. Nobody knows that it's happening or how it's happening. And that's why it feels like magic. Remember, I talked in a few videos ago about what happens when the magic is gone. And so, so the first time you're attractive, nobody knows what's happening. It just feels like, oh, it's amazing. You know, it's meant to be. We're in love. She's the one, right? And then when it dies, and then you're suddenly in, like, you know, the desert of the Sahara Desert, and things look terrible. That's when the man needs to figure out how attraction works and start implementing these strategies and start making himself the kind of person consciously that women in general are attracted to. And that's basically it. And if you want to know more about that, then feel free to message me, PM me. We can talk. We can have a discovery call, see if you're a good fit for one of the programs. If not, I'll leave you with some actionable tactics anyway. So yeah, my PMs are always open. Any questions, leave them in the comments. We have a comment here that says, I'm definitely Zoolander Intelligence. And I don't know who that is because it says Facebook user, because I'm using a third-party app here. But Zoolander is a great movie. And so that's another thing about being attractive, is being fun and playful, right? You know, being masculine and being man is not all like, you know, it's not all grim stoicism. That's important. But it's also being lighthearted, being able to make people laugh, being able to enjoy yourself in the moment. Because back to frame, what we talked about last week, part of your frame, your job as the man, right? Your job as the man is to build your frame out so that it's strong and resilient and can handle her challenges, whether they be power challenges or comfort challenges. You got to have a frame strong enough to withstand that. And then your frame has to also be attractive enough and fun enough that your wife is willing to leave her frame and come in yours. And then you're laughing. Then you don't have to say, hey, you know, we don't have enough sex, because that's going to her and talk to her frame about sex. In your frame, sex is a regular occurrence because it's a natural, healthy part of a marriage and of any long-term relationship. And you know why that is? Because sex is a natural, healthy part of any long-term relationship. And that's the trick about frame, is that your job as the man is to have the best frame. And I don't mean like number one, rah, rah, rah. I mean, you've looked at things, you've seen the world, and you know the best way to move through the world, the most optimal, the most effective way to move through the world. That's what it's about. You want to talk more about this? Send me a message, PM. This is what I do. This is what I talk about all the time. I'm knee deep in it, neck deep in it even. All right, gents, that's 1% Wednesday for this week. I hope you are well, and I'll see you around the man cave. Ciao, ciao.